The light switch made the same soft click it had made 20 years ago when I first stepped into that office. Back then, it was a dusty corner with flickering bulbs, a folding chair, and a whiteboard that still had someone else's doodles on it. Now it was glass-walled corner view, ergonomic everything, with a plaque that said LED Systems Architect for about 12 more seconds. I stood there, hand still on the switch, watching the overhead fluorescents blink off for the last time. Behind me, my office plant drooped like it had heard the news too. The photo of me and the old co-founders still sat on the bookshelf, slightly crooked from when the cleaning crew knocked it askew last month. I never fixed it. Maybe I knew this was coming. The hallway outside buzzed with the dull hum of people pretending not to care. When you've been with a place as long as I have, name becomes the kind of whisper that managers squint at on or charts and interns try to Google, and yet you disappear with one sentence. One smug, rehearsed, soul-sanitized HR sentence. "The exit is behind you," Brock said, grinning like a man who thought he just won something. "But we'll get to him in a minute. Before we do, if you've made it this far, pause and hit that little subscribe button and maybe throw a like this way. I know, everyone says it. But unlike Brock, you actually have taste. And trust me, what's coming, you won't want to miss it. It really helps the team bring you more of this chaos, betrayal, and quiet revenge. Anyway, it's a strange thing leaving a job you practically raised from infancy. When I joined, the code base was duct taped together by two guys working from an apartment that smelled like hot pockets and regret. The server was literally under someone's bed. I wrote the very first line of what would one day become a 500 million software suite on a borrowed laptop while a cat walked across my keyboard. I didn't just build the system, I was the system. From Theligen protocols to the reporting engine to the hand-coded interface, we eventually replaced with something sleeker. I built the thing like it was a child I never had. While other departments, through happy hours, stayed behind writing patches and onboarding every new CTO who waltzed in thinking they were the next Steve Jobs. Spoiler, none of them were. 3 CEOs came and went, some decent, some dumber than toast, but none of them ever questioned my place. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't loud. But when the app crashed at 2 a.m., or the security expired on New Year's Eve, guess who they called? The ghost in the machine. Me. I saw mergers, audits, lawsuits, marriages, even a few affairs conducted through the office Slack. HR tried to block the word boob once and accidentally shut down the whole knowledge base. And every time, quietly, calmly, I fixed it. I kept things running while others played dress-up in corner offices. And then Brock showed up. Brock was the kind of guy who says, "Let's circle back like it's a power move," and wears cologne that smells like burned ambition. Private equity had installed him to modernize us, which really meant slash anything that wasn't shiny and new. I was neither. To him, I was legacy code in human form. He swaggered in with his laminated buzzwords and PowerPoint decks full of things like synergized monetization and cloud-native revolutions. I asked him once what a Kubernetes cluster was just for fun. He said, "I don't get into the weeds," which is CEO for I googled it and still don't get it. Still, I smiled, nodded, did my job, kept things running. Until this morning, he called me into his office. HR sitting like gargoyles on either side, and delivered the news like a man handing out parking tickets. "Ellen," he said, like we were old friends, we're restructuring. "It's time for fresh blood. You've had a good run." I said, "Nothing," just smiled. "Do you have anything you'd like to say?" one of the HR twins asked, eyes flicking nervously at my calm face. I thought about saying something witty, something scathing, maybe quoting Clause 7.3 from the original IP agreement that no one bothered to update. Instead, I stood, gathered my things, walked down the hallway past the engineers who suddenly found their monitors very interesting, reached my office, turned off the light, click, one tiny sound, the end of an era. Except it wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The weirdest part was how polite they tried to make it. If they used enough throw pillows and chamomile-scented HR language, it wouldn't be what it was. A hit job wrapped in a silk napkin. Brock's assistant, Kendall, messaged me at 9:42 a.m. "Can you step into the CEO suite for a quick touch base?" Like I was about to get a company mug or a heads up about some new security protocol, not the gallows in high heels. I knew the second I opened the door. Rock sat in his leather chair like a cat who just figured out how to open the fridge. HR flanked him on both sides. Janet and Trevor, team beige, their laptops already open, their expressions already pre-baked in concern. Brock stood, extended his hand like this was some networking brunch. I didn't take it. "Elin," he said like he wasn't about to professionally murder me. "We appreciate everything you've done. You've been with us a long time. 20 years, said flatly, just so he had to feel the weight of it in the room. It landed like wet concrete. He smiled wider like Hemis took acknowledgement for agreement. Right. 20 incredible years. But we're entering a new phase. It's time for modernization. And unfortunately, that means restructuring some legacy positions to make room for new talent. Fresh blood, new ideas. You understand? I watched his mouth move, but my brain focused on a detail behind him. Framed poster of our software's first interface, version 1.0. The one I built on my back porch with a dog at my feet and a mosquito lamp buzzing above my head. The one they now bragged about in shareholder decks as a revolutionary leap in enterprise architecture. Brock had no idea he was firing the person who was the architecture. You've had a good run. He finished as if he was patting me on the head and giving me a coupon to Olive Garden. Ever leaned forward, probably rehearsing this in his sleep. We'll offer you a generous severance. 2 months full Cobra Access outplacement services understood. I said and stood just like that. No why me, no protest. No asking who they thought could possibly maintain the code base. No warning that the contract they never updated was about to cost them a 9-digit panic attack. Trevor blinked. Janet's eyes narrowed. Brock tilted his head like a confused dog. I watched it land on them. Wait, she's not fighting this. They expected tears. Maybe a desperate plea. What they got was silence. So calm it became unsettling. Evelyn, Brock said slowly. Is there anything you want to ask? I thought about it for one heartbeat. Then I said, nope, and turned to go. The hallway outside felt colder than it should have. People glanced at me, then quickly away like eye contact might get them fired too. Cowards, every one of them. It onboarded half of them, fixed their bugs, signed their time-off requests when their managers were off getting drunk at team strategy retreats. I passed the operations pit where someone was microwaving fish. Of course they were, and made it to my office. I took the long route on purpose. I wanted them to see, not to gloat, just to witness. Once inside, I shut the door and stared out the window. Rain, light, October drizzle tapping the glass. I stood there a moment before moving. Didn't pack much. Just my laptop, the red leather binder that lived in the back of my filing cabinet, and the ceramic mug that said coffee first, bugs later in fading black letters. The mug had a hairline crack that caught the sunlight like a fault line. Fitting. I glanced at my bookshelf, left everything else. Let the interns inherit my copy of clean code. Let Brock keep the framed photo on the wall, one where I stood beside the co-founders at the launch party before any of them knew what they were doing. Before they started calling me legacy like it was an insult. I zipped up my tote, walked out without a sound, and took the stairs 5 flights. I didn't want to share an elevator with someone who'd pretend they didn't know what just happened. Outside, the wind was sharp. I didn't flinch. I walked to my car, turned off my phone mid-buzz, and sat in silence. Let the rain fall. Let the servers stall. Let Brock think he just executed a clean win. He didn't know yet, but he would. There's a difference between silence and surrender. One of them comes with a lawyer. The phone was the first to go, powered off mid-vibration, mid-email, mid-whatever. The screen dimmed to black like it had finally been relieved of duty, and I slid it into the glove compartment like a sleeping pill. I never intended to wake up. Company laptop joined it unopened. They'd get it back when they earned it, or when someone from legal came crawling to retrieve it, whichever came first. The rain picked up, tapping on the windshield like the universe was slow clapping. I didn't drive home. I drove east, away from the office park, past the dead-eyed strip malls, and forgotten Pizza Huts toward a spot I hadn't been to in years. A little cafe tucked behind a public library kind of place with chipped saucers, mismatched chairs, and Wi-Fi that might work if you begged it nicely. I parked, took a breath, walked inside, and let the warmth wash over me like a security blanket stitched from espresso and cinnamon rolls. Elin, the barista, blinked. Haven't seen you in what Atticade, 15 years. I smiled. Still make those molasses cookies? She grinned and nodded toward the glass case. Only for the loyalists. I ordered one. Sat down in the far corner, where the seat still wobbled if you shifted your weight wrong. I didn't mind. It made things feel human. From my tote, I pulled out the red leather binder. The edges were worn, corners bent like a book that had been reread through several past lives. I laid it on the table like an offering. No one around me knew that inside that binder lived the potential end of Brock's career, and maybe the company's illusion of control. Opened it to the first tab, Initial Agreement. Elin R., dated 2 decades ago, signed with a pen that had since exploded in my desk drawer. Back in year 1, we were 4 people sharing a borrowed conference room and 1 busted Keurig. I wrote the code every line. The founders knew it. I didn't take a salary that first summer because they were burning investor fumes just to keep the lights on. So instead, we agreed on paper, notarized, scanned twice, and emailed to 2 different Gmail addresses for redundancy that the IP would remain mine. Specifically, ownership of source code, libraries, and compiled executables shall remain with the author ER until full equity conversion is completed and documented in writing. They called it a placeholder, said it would be updated when we go legit. Except we never did, oh sure. We incorporated, grew, built client portfolios and sales decks, and hired interns to write Slack bots that told us when it was someone's birthday. But the clause, the handoff, it never got cleaned up. Too much momentum, too many shiny distractions. Brock's predecessors probably assumed it was done already. Brock himself wouldn't have recognized a legal trap if it bit him in the LinkedIn endorsements. I flipped to the second tab, emails chain from 2008, where I reminded the co-founders. We still need to revisit IP assignment. I'm not incorporated into the Master Software Trust yet. Their reply, we'll loop in legal when we have bandwidth. For now, thanks for keeping us moving. Bandwidth. That was their word for we'll forget this on purpose. I kept everything, every reminder, every avoidance, every shrugging soon. The binder wasn't just proof, it was time travel. Every page reminded me of late nights debugging APIs that no one else understood of negotiating our first client SLA, while the CFO vomited in a trash can from panic. And there it all was, a living record that said, you may have built the skyscraper, but I still own the foundation. I sipped my coffee, the molasses cookie melting perfectly against the heat. My fingers hovered over my laptop keyboard, the one I bought myself years ago, one no company could demand back. I opened my email to Jeffrey Hooper at Law Firm Net subject, IP assignment and licensing rights. Hi Jeff, ready to talk? Just had an interesting morning. Let's set up a call. I attached scans of the binder tabs and clicked send. Then I closed the laptop and just breathed. No pings, no Slack emergencies, no performance reviews built by people who couldn't spell JSON. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Inside, I watched a man try to plug in his charger upside down 3 times. The world kept turning. They thought they deleted me with a 6-minute meeting and a smug smirk. But they didn't know I kept receipts, and every clause is a fuse waiting for the right match. At 10:17 a.m., the East Coast Healthcare Portal timed out mid-login for 6 hospital administrators trying to pull quarterly compliance reports. 5 minutes later, Insurance Claims Processor flagged 4 internal errors. Module X032 not responding. By 10:26, a government contractor from DC left a voicemail for our client success manager. Why can't we access the custom dashboard you promised? The thing about enterprise software is it doesn't implode with a bang. It cracks quietly and then all at once. At 10:34, someone in it, probably Marcus, judging by the panicked string of diagnostics that hit the server logs, realized the auto-authentication flow wasn't just stalling, it was locked. The backend was refusing credentials like a bouncer with a grudge. Error. Permission denied. Insufficient clearance. It wasn't a firewall issue. It wasn't a DNS route. It was the system itself saying, I don't know you. The core modules, ones I wrote in the first year and wrapped in a custom layer of encryption and handshake verification, were sealed off like a panic room. Legacy keys expired weeks ago, and the updated authentication handshake. Let's just say I was the only one who ever rotated it in a schedule no one else ever tracked. HR might have deactivated my email, but they didn't touch the substructure because they didn't even know where it lived. 11:02 a.m. Rock was in the server room, not his natural habitat. Security footage later showed him storming in like a televangelist trying to cast out demons, yelling at the racks like they personally offended him. Just reboot it, he barked. You want us to reboot the production environment? Marcus asked, blinking like a hostage. Yes. Clear the cache. Reset the damn containers. We don't use containerization for the core modules, someone mumbled. Delete whatever's blocking access. He was shouting at air by then. Marcus turned pale as he stared at the script outputs rolling across the monitor. Timestamps blinking, access loops failing, fallback credentials spinning like a car stuck in mud. By 11:23, sales got the first angry call from a Fortune 100 client. Someone in procurement unable to verify invoice packages. The portal glitched out and reset to a 2017 interface. Looked like an archaeological dig site. Then came finance. Then legal. Then DevOps started tracing the logs upstream. And that's when the real panic began because there was no upstream. The heartbeat server that all those requests ultimately passed through, the codebase that determined where and how data flowed, was gone from the active environment. Not deleted, just unreachable, masked, isolated. It had been wrapped in an invisibility cloak made of red tape and bad assumptions. By noon, a third of our client stack couldn't access their dashboards. A fourth couldn't authenticate at all. The chat logs were melting. Who changed the core routing? Why is the encryption key different? Who approved this update? Did Evelyn leave a credentials doc before she left? No, just a binder. That last message came from Julia in DevOps. She meant the red leather binder. Had no idea what was in it. Brock stormed back to his office, nostrils flaring like a bull trying to smell competence. Kendall tried to hand him a tablet. He slapped it away. I want eyes on everything. Find the last person who touched those modules, Sir Julia said cautiously, poking her head in the doorway. That would have been Evelyn. Silence. Brock sat down slowly. His fingers hovered above his laptop, then dropped as he stared at the screen, slack-jawed. Infrastructure map they were looking at had holes in it. Entire branches of the codebase grayed out like ghost limbs. The internal admin panel said access revoked, but no one knew who revoked it, because technically it was never theirs to revoke in the first place. From my cafe seat, I refreshed the internal status dashboard when I still had passive read access to thanks to an oversight buried deep in the legacy build process. Requests 2,174 failures, 847 escalations, 39 root access attempts, 5 successes, 0. A pop-up chirped on my personal laptop. Jeff, my lawyer, confirming our call at 2 p.m. with a short message. Got your docs. Reviewing now. If what you sent is accurate, they're about to have a very bad afternoon. I took another bite of the cookie. It was still warm. Back at HQ, Brock ordered another reset, and the system laughed in his face. 12:46 p.m. The General Counsel tried to push an emergency patch to bypass the failing authentication modules. One of those blunt force legal panic moves where you throw a stack of paper at a wall and hope the system blinks first. It didn't blink. Instead, it threw up a legal stop. Unauthorized access attempt logged. Primary license holder not verified. Patch request denied under operating agreement. The line that caused the full body shiver. Red Loop Systems LLC registered owner, Elin R. Langford. Langford, not Brock, not the company. Me. See, back when we were broke and running on fumes, I incorporated a separate dev shell, Red Loop Systems, to house the IP. It was standard practice for independent contractors. The intent was always to transfer the ownership later, once we had real lawyers and locked down funding. They even thanked me for keeping it clean and professional. That's how naive they were. No one ever circled back to close the loop, because why would they? I was loyal. I was one of the good ones. The kind of person you could underpay and overly on. The kind who'd always be there when something broke until I wasn't. So when General Counsel tried to patch the failing code, the system called out the one name no one had spoken aloud in 6 hours. Mine. That's when the nuclear call chain lit up. First, legal called it. It called DevOps. Then DevOps called HR, and HR, with sweaty palms and twitchy inboxes, finally called Brock. Sir, we have a problem. Brock, red-faced and foaming ego, marched into the war room they'd converted from Arnold Design Studio. The founders' portrait stared down at them from the wall, back when he had more hair and fewer lawsuits. What do you mean? Elin owns the code. Julia slid her laptop across the table, not the code. Technically, the shell company, the licensing environment, the executable layer that governs access. It routes through Red Loop, which she owns, which we never officially merged or acquired. Brock blinked like someone trying to read a DUI test backwards. General Counsel, pale and sweating through his collar, cleared his throat. There's also the matter of Clause 7.3. Clause what? From the original agreement. Licensing rights remain with the author until transferred or renegotiated in writing. It's never been renegotiated. You're telling me she owns our software? I'm telling you, the lawyer said. We never stopped her from owning it. Silence fell like a dropped casket. Then someone whispered what everyone else was thinking. Why the hell didn't we update the assignment clause? And suddenly the founder was back. Not in person yet, but in spirit via phone call from a vineyard in Soma. It was mid-sip of something $400 a bottle when the panic reached his inbox. What the actual F do you mean? She owns the platform. He barked across a speakerphone so loud it cracked there. Brock tried to spin. It's a temporary permissions error. She built that thing in my garage. We agreed to sign it years ago. Well, sir, the documentation. Don't tell me about the documentation. Tell me who signed the Fing update clause. Nobody had, because nobody ever did. The founder lost it. You let her walk out with $1 billion skeleton key, and you didn't think to check if the door locked behind her. In the background, you could hear someone drop a glass, the sound of expensive Cabernet hitting concrete. Perfect. Legal started scrambling. They drafted retroactive assignments. They emailed template letters. They Googled California LLC seizure protocols like first-year law students cramming before finals. It printed a list of all users, with elevated access and a last-ditch effort to find some workaround. Everyone had the same thought. Maybe she left USA backdoor. Maybe she was bluffing. But I wasn't bluffing. They never understood the nature of what they'd fired. They thought they were cutting fat, but I wasn't ornamental. I was infrastructural. Every update, every migration, every security hardening, it all passed through red loop systems, wrapped their empire around a skeleton, and now the bones were walking out the door. By 2:11 p.m., a second government client called to say their contract was frozen pending access clarification. That triggered an internal audit notice. By 2:24, an investor group started dialing the founder directly. At 2:31, Brock's assistant brought him a note. 4 words. Handprint shaking slightly, "You need to fix this." Looked up at general counsel. "Do we know where she is?" I think the lawyer said she's lawyering up. They didn't know I was already in Jeff's office. And we were on our second espresso. My phone, dead 4 hours, finally grown to life at 3:02 p.m. I turned it on for exactly one reason, to retrieve my 2-factor authentication code so I could sign a DocuSign. Jeff just sent over a clean surgical licensing draft. 3 years exclusive, renewable, with a clause that would make any private equity clown think twice before tossing their architects like expired yogurt. As soon as the screen lit up, the notifications exploded. Voicemails, 47 texts, 138 missed calls, 185. I didn't listen to a single one. It buzzed again, blocked number, then again, then again. It was like the device itself had been possessed by the ghost of Brock's failing confidence. I muted it, flipped it over on the cafe table, and went back to reading. Jeff leaned over from across the booth, sipping his espresso. They're melting down, aren't they? Like a Jenga tower made of Red Bull and hubris. He grinned. You were smart to keep everything. Most people forget until it's too late. I designed the forgetting, I said, flipping to another scan in the red binder. I knew the day they got funding, they'd stop treating paper like gospel. I was just patient. On cue, I linked and pinged. It was a message from someone I hadn't heard from in 3 years. Maya, a junior dev I trained during her internship. The message was short. They're freaking out. Are you okay? I stared at it for a second, then tapped out a single reply. Slightly smiling face. Then I logged off permanently. Let them wonder what the emoji meant. Let Brock hold a meeting about it. Let legal write a memo. Back at HQ, the bloodletting was accelerating. Julia from DevOps had dug through the legacy Slack exports and old SharePoint backups like a paleontologist in a tar pit. And there it was, dated 18 months ago to Brock Mitchell from Evelyn Langford. Subject IP assignment and audit recommendations. The body of the email was clear and painfully simple. Brock, attaching my recommendations from the last infrastructure audit. Still haven't finalized the Red Loop licensing transfer or updated the ownership language in the ops charter. Happy to walk through it this week. And right below it, Brock's reply. Thanks, Evelyn. Not a priority right now. Let's stay focused on modernization and forward velocity. I'll circle back after Q3. They never circled back. Now, legal was printing this email on letterhead and slapping sticky notes on it like it was a live grenade. Founder had already forwarded it to the board with a online message. So this is why our contract pipeline just the bed. Someone in HR tried to redact the email chain for the internal investigation, but it was too late. A screenshot was already in the group chat labeled Fail of the Century. The mood in the office had shifted from panic to blame. The DevOps team accused legal. Legal blamed Brock. Brock blamed processes. Char tried to vanish behind policy binders and wellness posters. At 3:36 p.m., the system's dashboard auto-reshed for the third time that hour. Failure rates held steady at 34%. Back-end queues were stacking up like junk mail, and one of the load balancers started looping requests in a dead cycle. Someone in QA joked, "We've got the world's most expensive screensaver now." No one laughed. Meanwhile, I sat across from Jeff, watching traffic roll past the cafe window, watching emails fly in that would never be opened, watching Brock's little empire contract like a dying star. He'd fired me with a grin, but he hadn't checked the wiring on the bomb he was sitting on. And now, every delay, every glitch, every white screen of death, it all screamed the same quiet truth. You fired the wrong person. Jeff pushed his glasses up. They're going to offer a deal. I nodded. I know. What are you going to ask for? I smiled. Everything I've already earned plus interest. The emergency board meeting was called for 5:02 p.m. sharp. But by 4:36, most of the key players were already seated. Sleeves rolled, jackets ditched, eyes hollow from 12 hours of spinning their wheels in the muck of their own negligence. The lights in the conference room were too bright, the air too cold, and the coffee once free-flowing, and Artisol been replaced with whatever stale battery acid was left in the break room Keurig. They were waiting for one person, the founder. He landed in a private jet from Madrid 30 minutes prior, still wearing sunglasses and what looked like golf shoes. He didn't stop to say hello, just power walked through the lobby with the gait of a man who'd been told his $500 million golden goose might actually be rented from someone he just fired. When he entered the boardroom, no one dared speak. Brock stood trying to offer a handshake. The founder walked past him like a ghost. No words, just a leather folder slapped onto the table. Inside, printed emails, IP documents. A red post-it with one word in Sharpie. Why? General Counsel cleared his throat. Shaking slightly, he held up a stapled document that looked like it had been rescued from the bowels of some long, abandoned Google Drive. Here had Clause 7.3. Licensing rights remain with author until transferred or renegotiated in writing. The silence afterward wasn't just awkward. It was radioactive. One of the board members leaned forward. That's from the original agreement. General Counsel nodded. Dated July 12, 2006. Reconfirmed via unsigned assignment drafts in 2008, 2012, and again in 2019. None executed. Thela-sensing entity, Red Loop Systems LLC, still active. Registered to Evelyn R. Langford. All IP traffic for the core software routes through Red Loop infrastructure. So, wait, the same board member said, blinking. Are we saying we don't own the platform? Not the platform, General Counsel replied. WOWN parts, the front-end UI, the client integrations, but the core back-end, the source tree, the database schema, the licensing kernel, all of it is licensed to us under implied use, was never formally transferred. A second board member chimed in, voice climbing. But we've been selling this software for a decade. How does that work legally? General Counsel didn't blink. Technically, we've been slicing a product we don't own. If Evelyn decided to resend the implicit license, she can do that. Brock barked. The founder snapped. You're damn right she can do that. You fired her like she was a temp. Did no one think to check the damn ownership trail? Assumed it was updated, Brock said, sweating through his collar. She never said anything. She emailed you, General Counsel interrupted, now furious. We found 3 separate documented attempts by Evelyn over the past 5 years, offering to walk you through the legal cleanup. You ignored all of them. He flipped one of the printouts. Brock's email glared back at him in 12-point Helvetica. Not a priority right now. Let's stay focused on modernization. Room went cold. The founder's hands balled into fists. We're one client escalation away from a class action breach. One more government agency notices the disruption and we're facing a federal audit. Do you understand what happens to our valuation if the tech stack is legally ambiguous? Brock was pale now. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Another board member spoke slow and stunned. We've built our entire roadmap, our Q4 sales targets, and software we don't technically own. Yes, General Counsel said. And unless we can strike a new licensing agreement with Evelyn within the next 48 hours, we may need to issue a notice to shareholders regarding potential operational risk. Someone cursed under their breath. Someone else knocked over a glass. The founder looked at Brock like a man seeing him for the first time. You fired the architect of our core product without cause, without legal review, without confirming that we actually owned what she built. She was legacy, Brock blurted. She wasn't innovating. We needed new leadership. No, the founder said, voice. You needed a babysitter, and you just threw away the only adult in the room. Outside the conference room, employees walked by oblivious. Inside, the board sat stunned, realizing they had just detonated their own foundation with a single smug handshake and a termination notice written in Comic Sans corporate cheer. They didn't just lose an employee, They lost ownership. And Evelyn hadn't even raised her voice. Jeff's office sat on the 23rd floor of a downtown building that smelled like polished stone. Generational wealth and old money mistakes. Kind of place where the elevator buttons felt expensive. And the receptionists offered you water like they knew you'd be buying something big. I walked in just after 9 a.m. Nourish, no makeup, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense knot. I looked like what I was, a woman who no longer had anything to prove. Jeff greeted me with that same quiet smile he'd had since the beginning. Cool, precise, the kind of lawyer who always read the last paragraph first. His assistant ushered me into the glass conference room where a thick-bound packet already sat on the table, tabbed and highlighted in surgical neon yellow. "We're ready," Jeff said. "They've called 4 times since 7 a.m. Same question every time. What does she want?" I pulled out the red leather binder and set it next to the proposal. "A little poetic symmetry. What do I want?" I echoed, sliding into the chair. "Simple. I want terms." The packet was clean. 3-year exclusive license. 90 million upfront non-negotiable royalties on every new client rollout using the Red Loop stack. Full advisory role baked in with board-level veto power on architectural changes. No reassignments, no dilution, no replacement. "I'm not coming back to code," I told Jeff. "I'm coming back to protect what I built. They can decorate it all, but no one rewires the plumbing without me in the room." He nodded, pushed back on the royalties in the board roll. "They're welcome to rebuild the stack from scratch." Then I said, flipping the page. Clause 14 was my favorite. It wasn't about money. It was about narrative. "The company will issue a formal public retraction of the termination notice stating that Evelyn R. Langford's departure was the result of internal miscommunication and not performance-based." "And Brock, Jeff asked, that's clause 15, I said effective. "Immediately upon licensing agreement execution, Brock Mitchell will resign or be removed from all operational authority. No more smiling assassin moves," I added. "He's out." Jeff didn't blink. He tapped his pen against the folder, calculating. "They'll scream, then they'll pay. They'll scream while paying." I corrected and signed the top page. "I want the press release reviewed before it goes live. I want it to include my advisory role, and this is important. Acknowledgement of my authorship of the software architecture." "You want your name in lights?" he said. "No," I said, standing. "I want my name where it should have been all along." The signature ink dried like a final seal. Jeff gathered the documents with a slow, satisfied nod. "They'll have it within the hour." I grabbed my coat. Good, because I'm going for a walk. As I exited into the cold, gray light of downtown, the city buzzed around me, oblivious to the shift happening 3 blocks away, in a boardroom full of people who had spent the last 24 hours rethinking everything they thought they controlled. They thought power was a corner office, a title, a calendar full of acronyms and strategy brunches. But real power is walking into a room where they tried to erase you and writing yourself back into the contract in permanent ink. I didn't threaten. I didn't yell. I just held the blueprint, and now we're paying rent on something they thought they already owned. The shareholder call kicked off at 4 p.m. sharp. The emergency kind. The one where your inbox lights up with 5 exclamation marks. And the calendar invite says mandatory in all caps like someone just found asbestos in the server room. They ran it over Zoom, but most of the board was already seated together in the main conference room. Brock sat at the far end of the table, suit wrinkled. Collar wilted, the smile long gone from his face. The founder sat dead center, flanked by 2 outside council reps and 1 visibly nauseous PR strategist. He held a folder in his hands. The licensing proposal, Jeff, and I finalized barely 24 hours ago. It was thick, every clause printed on double-spaced letterhead, just so no one could pretend they hadn't read it. He didn't ease into it. "This," the founder said into the mic, voice low, "Evelyn Langford's licensing proposal." He began to read aloud, slowly, clearly. Every line like a nail driven into the casket Brock built for himself. 3-year exclusive license, $90 million up front, 10% royalty on new installs. Architectural oversight retained by Miss Langford. Public retraction of her dismissal. He flipped a page. And clause 15. Immediate removal of Brock Mitchell from operational authority. There was a rustle in the room. No one dared speak. The founder looked up. His face had gone slightly pale, his voice a few dB thinner now. He turned to the board and said it not softly, not rhetorically, but with the stunned rage of a man who just learned his house had been built on borrowed land. "Why is our $500 million software in her name?" No one answered. Brock opened his mouth like he was about to give a TED talk on miscommunication and growth strategy. The founder held up a hand. "Don't you speak," Brock flinched. "Don't tell us this was a clerical oversight. Don't tell us it wasn't your priority. Don't tell us she never warned you, because we have the emails, Brock. We have the Slack messages. We have the audit notes you marked as low priority." He turned to the board again. "We've already voted. The terms are accepted. The contract is approved." And Brock, the founder, stood. "You're done." The silence that followed was total. Not a single eye, not a single cough, not even the sound of chairs shifting. Just the low hum of a Zoom call full of shareholders, realizing they almost lost everything, because one man thought legacy code meant disposable. Across town, in a building they never thought I'd set foot in again. I stood outside my old office door. Same hallway, same plant in the corner. Only someone had overwatered it in my absence, and now it drooped in defeat. I reached for the knob. My badge had been reactivated 20 minutes ago and stepped inside. Everything was as I'd left it. The chair, the shelves, even the stupid mouse pad with the built-in wrist cushion I hated, but never replaced. The only difference was thessalence, irreverent, almost sacred, quiet, like the room itself knew who had come home. I walked to the far wall and rested my hand on the switch. Same light, same click. The fluorescence buzzed to life overhead, humming like an old friend. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stood there absorbing the truth of it. They tried to erase me, and now every line of code they run, every dollar they earn, every update they deploy, it all begins with my name. I didn't need revenge. I just needed them to remember. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.